We have officially reached 100 days of turd McFucknugget Donald Trump in his second term in the White House. At the time of this recording, we have about 1,360 days remaining. His approval ratings are in the trash, and Kristi Noem's eyeliner is really struggling out in these streets. Strap in, folks. It's going to be a bumpy ride. I am Maggie Gehlsen-Burnett.
And I'm Mallory Hagan. This is pretty furious. All right, we've got another Big Mad episode today because the first 100 days of Donald Trump in office have been fucking chaotic.
I'll need a Klonopin and a morphine drip.
I mean, also, we just need a Klonopin and a morphine drip for our lives.
1,000%. It's been chaos.
The past couple of weeks, so the last time we recorded with Alan. Loved that episode. I hope you all did too. But I mean, just a tiny recap of what's been happening for myself and Maggie. Maggie, where did you go? What happened in your life?
All right. So, yes, I have had a crazy few weeks. I went out to Breckenridge for my best friend's 30th birthday. I have never been that high in the mountains before. That was the highest elevation I've ever been at in my life. And I made the crucial error of deciding to have some drinks, bestie's 30th birthday. And as somebody who very strongly identifies as sober curious, I don't drink very often anymore, let alone like multiple drinks in a day. I just want to say that if you are going to the mountains, first of all, don't fucking do that. That's the dumbest shit of all time. And then the second day we were there, we went on this bike tour and we went off-roading on these big ass bikes. And he took us to this distillery and we were supposed to shoot whiskey. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm not built Ford tough anymore. I'm not. Okay. So I returned from this trip.
Especially not if I have to get back on a bike.
Absolutely not. I don't want to kill people. I don't want to be killed, So we go on this trip. Now, prior to this trip, I had an endoscopy done at the end of March, and they had found out that I have this case of gastritis. Okay, well, they treat gastritis with a very solid and intense round of antibiotics. So I had been on antibiotics leading up to this trip. Destroyed me, ruined my gut, ruined everything. The worst experience. In the middle of this trip, obviously, I'm in 13,000 feet up. My skin is losing its mind. I come home from the trip. I break out in fungal acne. First of all, I take such pride in my skincare and in my skin. And I know that sounds so dumb, but it was a moment for me where I thought to myself, this is going to sound like the most white privileged woman shit of all time. But I thought to myself, I have so much empathy for people who are acne prone because I'm not. And I literally had this breakout and I was like, what the fuck is happening?
You had a mental breakdown.
Oh, fully. Yeah, fully. And so I consulted a friend of mine who's a cosmetic chemist, and she is the inspiration for the product that I will be talking about later on the intro to this episode. So that was my last couple of weeks. Mallory, let's talk about your last couple of weeks.
Well, wait, you didn't even mention, you came back home, you and your husband bought a car. We get back into the swing of things.
We bought a car. I sold my desk too soon on Facebook Marketplace, and now I'm recording from a meditation cushion in my office on one of those TV dinner stands. I'm a hot mess. I'm a full hot mess today. I look like Forrest Gump. I'm just I don't know.
This, by the way, is why we decided this should be the first ball cap episode.
It's the ball cap episode, yeah.
We're recording on a Saturday. Typically we try and do this during the week, during a work day when nobody's in our homes, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, both of us I've had a crazy several weeks.
Yes.
And Maggie's been holding down the fort for the podcast situation. But my husband and I bought a house, which was super exciting. But as everyone who's ever moved knows, we were packing for weeks, a couple of boxes here, a couple of boxes there, and feeling like we really had a handle on it. We were like, yes. And we decided to hire movers to hire furniture. We would move everything else, which is, fine in theory, except we just sorely underestimated the amount of shit that was in our house, which is crazy because both of us moved from small apartments because we were living separately together into this home. I was like, how did I accumulate so much crap in the last 2 years? But we moved, thank God for my in-laws who came to help us with the kids while that was happening. But in the midst of that, my husband got in a wreck. So his car was out.
And he's
Then
okay. Let's just clarify.
yeah, he's
Yeah,
okay. He's
Kevin's
okay.
okay.
His car was not. He got in a fight with a tow truck and he lost. And then as that was happening and we were trying to figure out like how to get that into the shop, get the rental, do all that kind of stuff, my car decided that it didn't want to work anymore. My starter went out, so had to get that situated, tow truck, all that kind of stuff. So we're doing all of that in the midst of trying to move. Finally got moved and feeling a little bit more settled in my life. But you talk about a breakout over the last 3 days. My face looked like maybe I also had a fungal
What
infection.
is it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I had just like red and white like bumps all over my face.
That sounds like what I had.
It
Yeah.
was crazy. It just finally today
Well,
settled
Mallory,
in.
do I have a product for you that
I can't wait because we can't be pretty furious without being pretty first, even though both of us have been on the struggle bus with that this week.
my product this week is okay. So I joke that I'm wearing this hat right now. If you're not watching on the video, that is very like Forrest Gump adjacent. And I often say that if I wear my hair curly with a ball cap, I can't escape looking like Tom Hanks in some capacity. It's either Tom Hanks as Forrest Gump or Tom Hanks in Castaway.
Castaway.
And there is no in between. So I put on this ball cap today. I pulled my hair back and I'm like, well, whatever. It's our ball cap episode. It's fine. But I will tell you, the product I'm going to mention here, no one will be expecting. It is the very basic $5 bottle of Head and Shoulders shampoo from the drugstore. Okay, I had this fungal acne breakout. Turns out, shout out to my friend Alex, who's a cosmetic chemist. She told me that the active ingredient in Head and Shoulders treats fungal infections. It's an antifungal.
Interesting.
And so I used it on my face for 3 days. That was it, just a teeny little amount, morning and night. And then I would just use like CeraVe moisturizer, something non-comedogenic, and it cleared up immediately.
Yeah.
Gone.
Yeah, it's looking
completely
good.
gone. Like, shout out to Alex. That was life-saving material. Just phenomenal.
Well,
Can't
I have
recommend.
to tell you, I was obviously following this saga on your Instagram. I do
Which
enjoy
I made
it.
it sound so dramatic. It's like,
No, I
it's
get
literally
it.
just
I
your
get
skin.
it. Kevin had a work event last night, and it was like all his close, coworkers, a lot of people I've never met before, and my face is just like red and bumpy and splotchy. I mean, it really like to feel that way is not great. It makes you
Right.
not want to be social. And I'm with you. I've never had skin issues, acne problems, like not even as a teen. So anybody who's dealt with that, my heart goes out to you because
Yeah.
it's like such a blow to your psyche and your
Yeah.
confidence. But I was going to say, if it didn't clear up this morning, Kevin's on his way to the store and I was going to be like, and also get some Head and Shoulders because we're going to see if that's going to clear this thing up.
For sure.
You know what I think it was, and I don't know exactly, but last night I just washed my face and I didn't do my skincare regimen. I didn't put anything on it. I just let it breathe. And I don't know if that was it or if it just needed to run its course. But either way, we're
For
feeling
sure.
better. All right, my product this week is a Lazy Girl ball cap version of.
love it.
To be honest, this is the thing that lives in. I have one in every single purse. You know how you just pick up your day-to-day purses? I have one in every single purse. I love this product. It is the perfect like color moisturizing lip balm, and it's actually Ulta Beauty's Plumped Up Pout collection. I love them.
Nice.
They have a variety of colors, and it's just like I don't want real lipstick on. I just want a little bit of color, a little bit of shine.
Totally.
Does
Yeah.
the trick,
The Ulta Beauty collection is severely underrated, so I'm really glad you mentioned that.
It honestly is, and I will say Ulta has great sales specifically on their Ulta Beauty products. So if you spend $20, they give you like a massive thing of testers. I mean, they really have some good deals on that. So
Nice.
shout out to Ulta.
Love it. All right. So, Mallory, in lieu of headlines this week, we are going to dive right into a recap of Trump's first 100 days in office.
Let me just crack my knuckles on my neck. Let's go.
Everybody, yeah, get your back ready. Okay. First, we're going to just kind of dissect a little bit what his first term in office felt like. We're going to kind of take it back a little bit, 2016 to 2020. Think about what you were doing then, the vibes of like the country, the state of the world.
Wait, I have a question before we go there.
Yeah.
Do you remember where you were the night of the election in
I do.
2016 and what you felt?
Yes. I have a video on my Snapchat because that was real big when I was in
Hashtag throwback.
And I have this video of me sitting next to my roommate, my roommate Gabby, who both very liberal. And obviously, I was in my senior year at the University of Alabama, so a very not liberal institution. We
As
lived on
noted
this,
by their
yeah,
commencement speaker this
literally,
past
right.
week,
I
who
know. Oh my
was
God.
none other than Donald Trump.
Oh my God. I had so many people in my news feed who were like stragglers I hadn't unfriended yet. And I'm like, thank you for letting me know that you were
Yeah,
really
get out of
excited he
here.
was there. Yeah. But we lived next door to a bunch of fraternity guys who we each had a balcony and you could like open the double doors to the balcony. And they began early that year hanging Trump 2016 flags off of their balcony. We obviously knew what their stance was, and these are Southern fraternity boys and they were in an old row fraternity. Like, it was very standard, very par for the course. And so I was just sitting next to my roommate Gabby, and Gabby's from London, so just both very, very liberal people. And we were sitting next to each other and we were like, we filled out our absentee ballots together. We were like, there's no fucking way this is happening. And there's this video of me and her taking this double bottle of Pinot Grigio. I believe it was barefoot, which is pretty
Ooh,
dark.
talk about a
So it's like
hangover.
a $5 bottle of wine. And just taking like pulls from this bottle because we were like, what is going on right now? So yeah, it was an experience unlike anything I've ever really, like, it felt like 9/11 to me, very
Yeah.
adjacent to that. So it was really an interesting experience. Where were you?
Yeah, it felt like a shift in the timeline.
Yeah.
Mostly because I too, I do think when you're a person who's paying attention and not just like on the surface level, but you really understand how the world works. Yeah, there was a part of me and my immediate family who I feel very lucky. You lived in Alabama for a time. I feel extremely lucky that every person in my immediate family, like the people I spend holidays with, are liberal. All of
That's
them.
amazing.
So there's there's one or two that maybe they just don't talk as much as the rest of us. But for the most part, we are all on the same page. And I happen to have just moved home from New York City in 2016. I moved home in August. I was working at an NBC affiliate as a reporter. And I remember I was sitting on the couch with my mom watching the returns. And like both of us lost it.
Yeah.
That night, I cried myself to sleep and I did not go to work the next day. And as a reporter, that's like super taboo. But I was just like, I cannot stand here all day and report that this assaulter, this grab him by the pussy
Yeah.
man just beat out the most qualified
Yep.
at that time, the most qualified person to ever run for president, not just woman, ever.
Ever. Yeah.
And yeah, like you, I just had the thought, I was like, surely people won't do this. Like, surely people will see that he is incompetent and a con man.
Yeah.
And not only did they not see it the first time, by God, we're here again.
I know, right? It's like, and you think I still had this same like kind of delusion this last election, right? Of like, surely they'll get it. And I think that tells me, I think that's both a good thing and a hard thing to believe to believe in humanity in that way. I think that's really a stand-up trait to have in a person. And also, it's a very difficult trait to have because you always expect that people will do the right thing. And then when they don't, you're just so disappointed all the time.
A friend of mine told me several years ago, we were talking about something unrelated to politics, and she said, you have to stop expecting people to operate the way that you do. And that's a really hard thing to do, especially when you're a person who, at the end of it, is pretty optimistic. Like, I have a very critical eye and I can see things for what they are. But at the end of the day, because I know that I do the right thing or I try my best to at every turn, it's like you kind of expect that that's how other people are moving through life, and they're not. And so I almost think that's why this election rocked so many people, even more so than the first time, because it was like a doubling down on like, no, a lot of people in this country are actually fucking assholes.
Yeah,
and they're
totally.
awful human beings.
Yeah.
And they're not good humans. Like, maybe the first time I could give you the benefit of the doubt that you were just dumb and maybe you didn't know, or you were willing to overlook these things. But you have this entire first administration, which, by the way, we're about to get into, the entire first administration to look back on. But nope, you also have amnesia, or you're just so racist and bigoted, you don't even fucking care.
Or you're
You don't
just so
even care.
stupid that you don't like, I mean, like I try to reconcile with the stupidity all the time. I think I've gotten to a place where I'm jaded enough to say I used to think that Trump voters usually fell in the category of just being stupid, just being misinformed, ill-informed,
Maybe not even
and
stupid, ignorant.
ignorant. Right.
Which
Yes,
I think is a
exactly.
which I think is a little bit different. If you're
Sure.
not in the trenches and paying attention, you're just ignorant to something. Not
Totally.
necessarily a stupid person, but when you have this much in front of you, this much data, this much personal
Information. Yeah.
information, yeah, it's
Yeah.
now you're just stupid.
Yeah. And well, and then there was like the second category of Trump supporters who I was like, well, they're hateful. So you have stupid and you have hateful, and Trump supporters either fall into one of the two categories. And I used to think that most just fell into the stupid category. And I think that was a way that I slept at night, was just to kind of reconcile like, oh, well, they just don't have the information. If they had the information, they would make a different decision. And now I'm recognizing that I think actually most fall into the hateful category. And I
Yeah.
think it's not really going to matter what information they have. So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the conversation around how people become so susceptible to things like cults or to fascism, because the people who are ascending to positions of leadership, a la Trump, and the people surrounding him, use the playbook of
right.
feeding off of people's hate and insecurity and pointing fingers at other people in their class versus upward at the billionaire class. They use all of that. And, you know, unfortunately, maybe this is a more empathetic take, but a lot of people in America have fallen prey to that. And I
Yeah.
think part of it is actually a part of my list of things that happened with him in the first term. And I think it actually started beforehand in his sort of media tour leading up to running, which was that he really destroyed people's faith in media
Yeah.
and ethical journalism. He destroyed people's faith in science, which we've talked about a lot here. The scientific process, the judicial process, and the big one, he continually sowed, you know, the seeds that our election process was rigged or not up to the par that it should be. People are voting that shouldn't be, et cetera. And when you put all those things together, you're sowing this tapestry of misinformation, distrust, the inability to believe in any of our systems, which, listen, I understand there's a lot about our government that's not great and needs improvement. I'll be the first to say it. But ultimately, the government's job is to do right by its citizens, protect them, provide for them. And when you basically convince half the population that that's not even the point, that's not happening through all of this misinformation, you kind of set us all up for where we're at now. And that was very much on purpose. That was by design.
And, you know, not to mention during his last presidency, we witnessed things like, you know, massive racial tension, to your point, kind of sowing this tapestry of hate. That's a big piece of all of this. You know, we had the Black Lives Matter movement June of 2020. So right after COVID had began, we had the murders of Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Elijah McClain. So white nationalism was really sort of at the center of everything that he was trying to build for his next run for presidency. So we have these Black Lives Matter protests. The thin blue line, you know, it was a Blue Lives Matter versus Black Lives Matter. So again, dividing people into two groups and then pinning them at each other instead of looking at, you know, from a top down perspective. Well, where did the police come from? You know, white nationalism is at the top of all of this. And so instead of looking up, we all looked across. And so just another way that we all did that, we had COVID. Massive thing that happened during Trump's last presidency. More than 400,000 Americans died from COVID-19 between the beginning of the pandemic and when Trump left office.
Yeah.
The fatality counts were insane, sometimes exceeding almost 4,000 people a day. It was a toll that was more severe than the overall toll of 9/11 or the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And again, during that time, to your point, sowing that misinformation and really convincing the American people that the scientists, the people who have studied things like this for their entire careers are based off of this, were not the ones to listen to, you know. So
Right.
he was making sure that he was kind of the main source for everybody in terms of what they should do and who they should look to. And he in turn convinced many of his Republican colleagues and governors and, you know, House representatives to follow suit. So, you know, you had people in Kim Reynolds in Iowa who was, you know, saying let's open up the state in early April. Just crazy behavior from these people who were so adamant about continuation of their support of Trump. So,
well, I also think part of why the COVID pandemic ended up being what it was for us versus other industrialized and well-to-do countries was there's this ongoing seed of rugged individualism in America, which we kind of touched on in our episode with Amanda. But this idea that we are the end all be all, we know better, and we don't need anyone else. And that is from a global perspective. We weren't doing the same things that other countries were doing. Other countries were quelling COVID in weeks because everyone has a collective mindset. They did what they were told, and they were able to not eradicate, but significantly lessen the impact of COVID in their countries. And not us. We've got half the people who are like, I'm not wearing a fucking mask. You're not going to tell me what to do. And it's like, just put on a mask. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that difficult.
Yeah.
Think about your community members and your neighbors and the elderly people who you know, who you love. But that idea of rugged individualism is really, I think, personally going to be the downfall of this country. I think it's exactly why we are where we're at right now. And that goes into everything. It goes into not wanting to pay your taxes to help other people and our healthcare and yada yada. But to me, Trump really feeds into that idea. He feeds into that we're the best and we don't need anyone. And you see that as we're going to get into right now with tariffs and all of these other things. But I just want to remind people that because of Trump, our economy was in the fucking shitter in 2020 because of COVID.
And let's not forget, after inheriting Obama's economy in 2016.
Exactly. I mean, this is the second time now, this presidency that we're in right now is the second time he's inherited an economy on the rise. And he's like, you know what? Fuck that.
Fuck you.
Yeah. But he was impeached twice. Why are we not still talking about that? He was impeached twice, and he left office in 2020 with the lowest approval rating of his entire presidency in 4 years. And that brings me to where we're at right now, which is that he has started this presidency with a job performance that has tanked to like 39% approval. That's lower than previous presidents at this point in their term. And in modern history, it's the lowest only to his first term. So he's doing worse. He's doing worse than he did the first time. And still, both of those rankings are less than everyone else in modern history. So we'll just start there. But I actually should go back because yes, his approval rating is terrible, but we can't move on from the first term and 2020 without talking about the fact that the man led an insurrection. So he lost the election to Biden, and then continuing those sows of division and hate and all of that, he freaking led an insurrection.
Literally. Yeah.
So, us liberal tears, at least we took this L with just a podcast instead of, I don't know, killing officers at the Capitol.
Exactly. Anyway. And we'll get into the insurrection as well and more about what that looked like in his first 100 days, what he did in terms of pardoning the insurrectionists. But let's talk a little bit about just kind of like some stats here. So in the first 100 days of Trump's presidency, the stock market's first 3 months were the worst for any president since the Great Depression. Since the Great Depression. I just want to say that one more time.
But people are like, oh, well, it's got to get worse before it gets better.
Okay.
All right.
Let me know.
Anyway.
Let me know.
How about this one?
Go ahead.
I was going to say more companies filed for bankruptcy in the first 3 months of this year than any first quarter since 2010. So for 15 years, more companies have filed for bankruptcy. We're at what? We're at like May. Today's May 3rd.
May 3rd.
January to May. More companies have filed for bankruptcy than any other first quarter.
Yep. And of course, Trump has promised to not touch Medicaid or Social Security, even after he tried to gut them every year in his first term.
But here we are. Looking at a budget where that's exactly what they're trying to do.
I just read on Threads the other day about how a woman who has stage 3 ovarian cancer was cut off from Missouri's Medicaid. Yeah. So
what are people supposed to do?
Exactly. And Social Security. So you're going to tell all of the senior citizens in America who rely on Social Security, who have paid into it for their entire
it's
working
theirs.
career. It's
Rightfully
their
theirs.
money. It is their money. You're going to tell all of them, including my parents, that they don't deserve fuck all in terms of retirement money. It's inhumane in a way that I cannot actually articulate that would do anybody any good. It is, if you voted for this man, I actually think at this point that you're inhumane. I think that's what I think. And yeah.
Well,
So
and
anyway,
one of the interesting things, though, I mean, it's not interesting. It's just we were all telling you, we were all telling everyone
literally
that this was a piece of Project 2025. They told us exactly what they were planning to do. It is literally written in a 900-page manifesto document, whatever you want to call it, and they told us.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure that people know that half of the executive orders that Donald Trump has signed thus far have been directly from the pages of Project 2025. Directly. How many has he signed? How many
He
has
has signed 142 executive orders since being in office. He reversed over 100 of former President Biden's executive orders, some of which include major protections for immigrants, for sure, seeing that in real time, women, low-income families, children, and many more. Some major topics in terms of those executive orders that he's addressed include ending birthright citizenship, taking steps to dismantle the Department of Ed, and that border emergency that he declared right on January 21st, I believe it was.
Yeah. You can't forget, though. You cannot forget that one of the ones he signed was that English is the official language of the United States.
Sick.
Yeah. Nothing like a melting pot.
Yeah, literally.
Well, I mean, amidst those executive orders, first of all, I want people to understand, if you don't already know this, and many people may, that an executive order really means fuck all.
Literally, yeah.
Like,
by the way,
it doesn't mean very much, but it is, I think, important to recognize them as signals and directives toward Republican members of Congress, Republicans in different states, etc. So with those 142 executive orders, though, this is according to CBS News, Trump has faced around 300 legal battles as a result. So federal judges across the country are raising complaints and issuing orders and blocking the Trump admin from enforcing many of these threats. There are many more things I'm sure that will come down the pipeline. It's also why it's super important to support organizations like the ACLU, people who are actually doing that legal work to combat some of these hateful and harmful orders. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. There's been several emergency responses and requests for relief to some of these issues, like transgender folks being able to serve in the military. We'll talk about that a little bit more in depth. The false deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia and firing, literally like everybody in the federal government. That number is actually estimated to be at least 116,000 people. That's according to CBS News. And that is through the implementation of DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, that he instated. Super sick.
Doge is just like, it's far more sinister than I think most people realize, and especially anybody who's still, MAGA. But yeah, I mean that, and then you've got there's the mission to shut down the Department of Education. And if you haven't heard our episode about that, we have a big matter just about the Department of Ed. And then we've got the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We've got, defunding Head Start and Parenthood. I mean, there are so many, that's not even to start mentioning defunding education, research, healthcare, all of those things that I think a lot of people don't really consider. Like they hear we're cutting costs and getting rid of fraud and waste and abuse and blah, blah, blah. But they don't consider that these have generational impacts on our society. Most specifically, healthcare research, things like that.
Yeah.
These are things that will impact us long after Donald Trump is dead.
Yeah. And, a couple of episodes ago, we did a deep dive into the SAVE Act, that will be detrimental to so many millions of voters, but specifically married women. So you can feel free to catch that episode to learn more about that specific issue. But let's do a little bit of a deep dive into a couple of our personal favorite issues of Trump's first 100 days in office.
Oh my God.
So let's start off out of the gate with Trump pardoning around 1,500 January 6th insurrectionists. So,
but blue lives matter, Maggie.
Blue lives do be mattering.
Unless they're protecting the people who represent us at the Capitol.
Perfect. Yep. Great. So according to some polling from the Associated Press, only about 2 in 10 Americans actually support this particular executive order. So this is an instance for me that really drives home like the cognitive dissonance that is required to be a Trump supporter. So they claim to be, patriots, patriotic, to value America being the home of the brave, and then they proceed to wreak havoc. It can only be described as literally meth-induced swamp person havoc on the most sacred, patriotic political place in the continental US. Like, talk about a big sleigh. I just, for one moment, want to also comment on the outfits of the people involved. I want you to know that when I was doing a little bit of research for this episode, I went to Google and I went over to the images section. And if you type in January 6th insurrection, and you go over to Google Images, I want you to be so prepared for what you're going to see. People were wearing like full Viking hats and like masks from the
Furs.
Purge. Yeah, furs, exactly. Yeah.
But you know what the scarier part is to me is like the other 90% of the people that were out there look like if you're in any rural place in America and you just walk in
Exactly.
Hardee's.
A hundo P. It's
Walk
a
in
Carl's
Waffle
Jr. Yeah.
House and you're like, you could have been there. You could have been there too.
100%.
It's something about like the certain color of a Wrangler jean and a belt buckle and like
and there's a lot of
construction t-shirt.
Steel toe boots.
And like a
yeah.
Carhartt hat and some Costas. I don't know.
But it's like, dude, Democrats sure as fuck didn't do this when Trump was elected again, because there is truly no better illustration than the differences between these political parties or even political ideologies than that.
Well, I just, and to me, the cognitive dissonance is to run around talking about how you want Trump because he's law and order and he's going to make sure that the people follow the laws, like the immigrants who are here illegally and, all of these things. Meanwhile, these people who attacked the Capitol did potentially the most treasonous thing you can do.
100%.
It is the worst. You're trying to overthrow the United States government. By the way, the reason that they're all carrying around their guns is because they're all like 2A, you know what we got to do if there's a tyrannical government. What?
Yeah.
Anyway, that is the most treasonous thing that an American can do. And instead of saying to his supporters and to Americans, I do not condone this behavior, he pardons them. Law and order my ass. And in addition to that, as we joked about at the start of this, there were police officers who died in the line of duty, protecting the Capitol and protecting the people who were elected to represent us who were there that day. And anyone who voted for Donald Trump should be ashamed of themselves and should be more ashamed of themselves if they wear a uniform. Because you cannot run around with your little blue line flag on the back of your truck and also support Donald Trump when he pardoned people who killed police officers.
Yep.
And they didn't kill police officers in self-defense. They didn't kill police officers in, something gone wrong. They were there on a mission. And what they did was the most egregious thing you can do if you believe in the sanctity of the United States of America and our Constitution.
100%. All because y'all don't like Nancy Pelosi. Anyway.
I mean, she's a bitch, and that's why I like her.
Yeah, I love that bitch.
She does not play.
All right. So let's talk about the second major topic we're going to kind of dive into here, which is Trump's tariffs.
Well, I mean, luckily today, I've said this already, but on Saturday, May 3rd, we're looking at people starting to freak the fuck out because they're showing, I don't know if you know this, but you can track shipping containers around the world.
I did know that. Yeah. I don't know what like the website is for that, but I heard that somewhere recently.
Yeah. I don't know what the website is either. I've seen still shots through work, but essentially like they're not coming to the US. We're just not going to get them. So if you were a prepper for COVID, you might want to double up on that for what's about to happen.
Yeah.
You're about to see empty shelves for a while unless things round off. But anyway, so when he announced these tariffs, this was like early April. And then he paused them because nothing screams, I know what I'm doing, like announcing tariffs and then whoopsie, taking them back. So a baseline 20% tariff began around April 10th for all countries. And then again, he kind of paused that. And then he kept a tax rate on Chinese goods, and that's at 145%. So all of this has been like other countries have been doing us wrong and we're going to get them back. And there is some truth to that. So I will acknowledge that there is some truth to that. However, do we really think for a moment that China is going, oh, he's right. We're going to change our behavior.
Literally.
No. What? So instead, every American consumer gets to pay for whatever the fuck this is that Trump is starting with China. And this could be looked at, I guess, as a punishment for what China does well, which is manufacture goods at a low cost. And we can't do that because Americans, and rightfully so, don't want to work for low wages. So the plus side of this is that fast fashion retailers will likely become less popular in the US, like Shein and Temu. And our episode with Shannon, man, we're just plugging episodes today, baby. Our episode with Shannon is a great explainer into why that's a good thing. But overall, this isn't a reasonable solution for fast fashion. I mean, this is just going to make things more difficult for the working class so that they can get the things that they need.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like, think about literally everything that's in your home. Every single thing that's in your house. Everything. From baby formula to the clothing that you wear to the desk that you write on. Like, whatever it is, the odds are incredibly high that that is an imported good. And the odds are even probably higher that that's an imported good from China.
Oh, you know who does import all the things from China? Trump and his merchandise.
For sure. Yeah.
So you won't even be, if you are MAGA, you won't even be able to buy your MAGA hat.
You can't even get your hat.
You can't even get your Make America Great Again hat.
Stinky. So I think, like, what truly blows my mind about all of this is, like, they say, the Trump administration will say through and through that this is a way to make more American goods, to bring manufacturing to the States, to make sure that we create all of the things that we are using. I just want to ask, like, how? What's the plan?
Yeah.
Also, where are we getting that money? How are we going to build factories in the States when y'all are giving tax cuts to Elon and Jeff and cutting all of these programs? Like, what's going on here? There's no plan.
Well, the thing is like, if this really was a long-term goal to bring manufacturing back to the US, to ensure that the American workforce was shored up with manufacturing jobs, first of all, they might have wanted to ask if people actually wanted manufacturing jobs, because a recent poll came out that said, and my numbers are wrong, but the discrepancy is huge. It's like 80% of people believe in bringing manufacturing back to the United States. And then it was like, 13% of them said that they actually would work in manufacturing or something like that. Like the desire to have manufacturing is there, but the desire to work in it is not. And you might have wanted to like do some research on that before you started claiming that we were going to bring it all back to the US. Not to mention, call it a 5-year plan. Like, incentivize companies to start building those manufacturing plants now, knowing that 5 years from now, we were going to make this switch or try to bring things back in this direction. Having these tariffs without said plan that you're talking about only ensures that everyone fails. The businesses fail. The American consumer fails in the sense that, like, we're just going to be spending a lot more money. And now we've again, through this rugged individualism, isolated ourselves from the places and the people and the workers who help us live this great big life in America by providing us the goods that we're able to purchase.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the same argument that could be applied to immigrants. It's like, they're the ones who are doing all of the grunt work on farms. They're doing all of the construction jobs. They are doing all of this work that the standard American doesn't fucking want to do. And so, you're going to deport all of them and then rely on, who's going to be out in the fields doing that agricultural work? Who's going to be building homes? Like, it is a complete double-edged sword. It's a total catch-22 that they're saying. So it's, all of this makes no sense, and obviously, truly just further impacts the middle class working American.
I think I was watching NBC yesterday, and I wish I could remember the reporter who did this or the anchor, but essentially she went on a shopping trip. It was a whole segment on the tariffs and how they're going to impact Americans. She made a list of her normal things she buys, normal stuff that she keeps in her home for her and her kids. And she was like, and I have one extra thing, like this isn't normal, but I need shrimp in this. And she was going to try and buy the whole list made in America. She made it through some fruits and vegetables okay, but everything else, she was having to like call stores. Shrimp, she couldn't find American caught shrimp. She went through 4 different stores. When she finally found it, this anchor is in NBC, so she lives in the New York City area. She had to drive out of the city to a specialty grocery store where it was $24 a pound for American caught shrimp. So by the time the segment was over, she was like, I mean, I guess it's possible if you've got all the hours in the day. Right? So I just thought that was crazy. If you can Google that segment, it was really enlightening to me.
That's wild. I'm going to need to watch that later. But yeah, so ultimately the TLDR is that these tariffs are fucking stupid. Nobody thought about the implications of them. And here we are.
Or they did and they just don't care.
And they don't care. Yeah. So let's get into talking about one of my last and personal favorite.
Well, it's probably not your favorite, like in a good sense, but
not in a good sense, but my favorite executive order that we'll talk about here, which is Trump's rollback on DEI initiatives and his attack on the transgender community. Obviously, this is not his first time attacking the trans community, but basically in January, Trump signed an executive order that is entitled, quote, "Ending Illegal Discrimination and Restoring Merit-Based Opportunity." Just LMAO, where he formally ended federal programs that were dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So there's also an executive order that was kind of like right after this that said it's entitled, quote, "Ending Radical and Wasteful Government DEI Programs and Preferencing." Hell of a title. I mean. And within this January 21st DEI rollback order, there is a section that encourages the private sector to do the same. So we have seen this with companies like Target.
I was going to say, how's that going for Target?
Yeah, how's that working out, Target? They have seen some of their strongest dips, I believe, in both their stock and in their revenue in this first quarter alone. So goes to show that boycotting these places does work. It is something that is actually a beneficial and useful tactic that we can implement. Additionally, another executive order that was signed was Trump's ban on transgender people enlisting or serving in the U.S. military. So that's truly kind of crazy considering that Trump has a Walmart spray tan and a $3 toupee that could be considered gender-affirming care. But moving on. Literally 90% of males who have a position in Trump's cabinet utilize gender-affirming care. JD Vance, how's that eyeliner going for you? Like,
Pete Hegseth just spent thousands of dollars to put a fucking makeup room in the Pentagon, all while claiming, by the way, to reduce waste in the military. They're literally cutting military programs because of spending. Meanwhile, he needed someone to get his makeup
He's
done.
like, I need a makeup room. That's fucking diabolical.
What he needs is a rehab center, but
truly, and a new phone. So in February, this memo was released by none other than Signal's fuckboy Pete Hegseth. Well, you know him, you love him. Declaring that, quote, "All new accessions for individuals with a history of gender dysphoria are paused," meaning that anybody who wants to try and join the military, who wants to enlist or enroll, if they've ever had a history of, quote, gender dysphoria, that's you pause all of those enrollments. Hegseth also asked that all trans folks be identified by the branches of military, so essentially like a system of knowing who is trans, and that they be, quote, separated from service unless they have a waiver, and that began in late March. Now, this order was essentially immediately challenged by, obviously, several groups and people. Numerous federal judges blocked the ban, and the Human Rights Campaign Foundation filed a lawsuit declaring that the ban was discriminatory and unconstitutional. Trump then recently asked, this was like last Thursday, so we're recording on the 3rd, this was on the 1st. He then recently asked the Supreme Court to uphold the ban while all of this kind of legal fuckery plays out. So I just want to read a really quick section from the directive that he signed in January, because I think this is really important here. So this reads, "Adoption of a gender identity inconsistent with an individual's sex conflicts with a soldier's commitment to an honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle, even in one's personal life. A man's assertion that he is a woman and his requirement that others honor this falsehood is not consistent with the humility and selflessness required of a service member."
I'm sorry. Can we hold on? Let's just highlight the words.
Yeah.
I want to highlight the words honorable. Wouldn't see Donald Trump's face there. Truthful, yet again. Disciplined. Our McDonald's king, get out.
Humility,
And it's
selflessness.
it's rich for him to talk about someone's personal life, brother. My brother.
So I find this incredibly rich, considering what you just said. I mean, he has 34 felony counts against him. He was held liable for sexual abuse. I don't think people understand what that really means. He ended up paying out a large sum of money to the woman who accused him. He spent 20 nights of his first 100 days, a quarter of his, what is that, a fifth, a quarter, almost a quarter of his first 100 days, math is hard, at Mar-a-Lago. And he hired people for his cabinet that are by definition like half-wit grifter imbeciles with really bad plastic surgeons. So this is just consistent with like all of the anti-trans rhetoric that we have heard. There's this thought that trans people are inherently harmful when really because of like the said fuckwits in office, they're just actively choosing to not understand trans people.
To me, doth protest too much. Thou doth protest too much. The way that Republicans, Donald Trump, all of these people are so obsessed with what other people are doing. I know that it's really not about people who are trans. I know that it is, again, about pointing fingers across instead of pointing fingers up. But guys, find something else to focus on. There is zero evidence that trans people are harmful. I would much rather be anywhere in this entire world with a trans person than with a middle-aged white man.
Hundo P.
Alone.
Not even a
like,
question.
And obviously, I am surrounded in my life by white men who I love and adore. But statistically, they are more dangerous than a trans person. So a 2018 study conducted by the Williams Institute at UCLA School of Law found that there is zero correlation between increased danger in restrooms and letting transgender folks use them. Shocker.
Crazy.
You know what does present a threat? Authority figures. So,
super sick.
For those who don't know, I traveled the country as an ambassador for Children's Miracle Network hospitals and also an advocate for child sexual abuse prevention. And the Department of Education report estimated that around 1 in 10 kids who report sexual misconduct report so from an authority figure before graduating high school. We've all heard the Catholic Church, but it's not just the Catholic Church. It's just about every church. Any place where children are in and around people who are supposed to be trusted adults, they are not technically and statistically safe.
Yep. It blows my mind that people have this idea that because somebody is in an authoritative position, that their child then by proxy will be safe. Like that is an insane justification to make.
Or that those people are good.
Right, exactly. Just because they went through a training, a police training, just because they went through the seminary, just because they went through any kind of, educational training, higher education, any of those things, that does not make them a safe person. In fact, in 2016, the Cato Institute released a report saying that around 9% of Americans claim to have been sexually harassed or abused by a police officer.
What? I didn't even know that.
By a cop, correct. So, and just for some, personal context, I grew up Catholic, and there were plenty of times where I felt uncomfortable with the priest who was at my Catholic school. He was good friends with our family. He said inappropriate things to me in a confessional booth. The Catholic Church has been responsible for millions of children being sexually abused, mostly men.
Isn't it like they've spent like $2 billion in settlements or something?
Mallory, that's just as of 2007. Right. That is
$2 billion since 2007.
That is almost 20 years ago. So I want you to imagine what that number is now. We will not have the statistics on the Catholic Church are the studies have not been there because there is not enough funding or support for them because the Catholic Church is so big. It is the largest.
Powerful. But you know what?
Exactly.
Trump wants to be the new pope, so maybe he'll fund that now.
Exactly.
He won't.
Like, it's insane to me how we hone in and fixate on someone who's different than us, rather than looking around at the people who are so very obviously detrimental to our safety. I literally, a year ago, my high school anatomy teacher was arrested for sleeping with a student and now is on a sex offender registry. Like, these are stories that every single woman, and not just women, probably men too, every single person has a story like this, where they know an authority figure and they felt uncomfortable with that person. It's everyone. So the fact that we are just honing in on a very specific group of people, all because we don't understand and don't care to understand their thought process, their beliefs, the way that they feel about themselves, that is insane behavior. It is the antithesis of everything that this country was built on.
Yes. And also, you cannot run around claiming that the United States military is not meeting its recruitment goals and that it's merit-based when you're discriminating against people, first of all, who want to serve, and second of all, are doing so based on merit.
Yep.
The military is already a meritocracy. Pete Hegseth does not meet the required merits to be the leader of the Department of Defense.
Nope.
But I digress. Again, we just want to go back to this idea of like pointing the finger at someone in your neighborhood who looks different than you versus making you aware of or helping you understand how the late stages of capitalism are really what's the problem here. But yeah, I think, I serve on the board of Rocket City Pride in Huntsville, where I live. The trans community has been under attack for the longest time, and it's just so exhausting. Mm-hmm. It's exhausting because it's the equivalent of being a 35-year-old adult and choosing to pick on a 12-year-old kid. Mm-hmm. Like, that is the same. Like, that 12-year-old is not a threat to you. They're not harming you. They don't even know the things they don't know yet. And yet here you are as a fully functioning frontal lobe developed adult choosing to pick on that person. It's the same like imbalance of power, and it's really just exhausting because it means nothing. It means everything to the trans community. But to the people who they're creating this boogeyman out of the trans community, it's so harmful to them, their lives, their psyche. They're already a group of people who statistically try to commit suicide at higher rates than others. Their safety is at risk when they live in towns, like small rural towns in places like Alabama. It's just this type of rhetoric and this type of othering has, as we've already mentioned, long-lasting generational impacts on people and their families. And it's just so disheartening and also totally predictable at the same time.
Right. Exactly. I think it's like, I just read a stat that said it's 45% of trans youth have contemplated suicide in the last calendar year. So
I believe it.
Yeah, 100%, especially with, just where we are as a country. And I just also want to note that if you are somebody who identifies as a feminist, if ostensibly you claim that equal rights for women is what you want in this life, you do not get to pick and choose who those women are. That includes trans women. That is, you don't get to say, yes, women, and then nix a group of people out of that. That's not your job. That's not your role. So I think there's a lot of people who maybe identify as feminists or would tell you all day long that they want equal rights for women. And it's sort of like the very stereotypical trope of like a maha mommy who, says she's a feminist, says she wants equal rights, but then says, well, you're not a real woman.
Right.
And it's like, no, actually, that's literally not your place at all to say that. So yeah, we are far better together. And if you aren't going to include trans women in that, then don't call yourself a feminist.
Well, and just here's like a little analogy for you. You live in a neighborhood, right? In your neighborhood, you have to drive by people's houses every day. One day, your neighbor decides to paint their front door neon yellow, and you fucking hate it. You hate having to drive by and look at that neon yellow door on a daily basis. And you know what? I might agree with you on that. I don't want to look at the neon yellow door either, but you know what? It's not your door. Mm-hmm. And that's to me like the same concept of people just living their lives. You might not understand what it means to be trans. That might not be a choice that you would make for yourself, even though I don't think that it's a choice. It might not be something that's for you, but it's not yours to decide. It's not your life or your body or your relationships or your sex life. Like, none of those things have anything to do with you. So just drive by the yellow door.
Right.
Like, leave that person alone. Don't make their life harder. You don't have to do something that's causing harm or making things more difficult for them. Just leave them alone. It's really that simple. What's the phrase? Just mind your fucking business.
We have a neighbor who has had I have to include this as a part of this. We have this neighbor who is across the street from us, and she has had this Christmas 2 years ago. She put up this big, huge, enormous fake pink tree in her front yard.
Please tell me it's still there.
has lights on it. It lights up every night. It's on a timer, lights up at 6 p.m. on the dot, like every night without fail. And, that winter came and went. This was the winter of 2022. And then, spring came and the tree kind of just didn't go anywhere. And we were like, okay, whatever,
Well, it's pink, it's spring. Okay.
Yeah, so we think, oh, it's an Easter tree. Valentine's Day, sure, Easter, sure, and then summer comes and we're like, tree's still up and it's still and by the way, the timer's still on. Still lights up at 6 p.m. every night.
Is she still there?
Mm-hmm.
She's still alive?
She's alive. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, girl, she's alive. She's alive and well. And that tree has not come down since. It is still up. It still lights up every day at 6 p.m. And it's funny to like joke about. We're kind of like, whatever, But at the end of the day, I can't do fuck all about that tree. I can't go over there and steal the tree because that would be wrong. And also, she has a Ring camera. And I'm not going to go and light the tree on fire. Do I sometimes look at it and I'm like, that is the fuggliest thing I've ever seen? Yeah. Sure, absolutely. But I'm not going to go over there and I'm not going to shit on what she likes. I'm not going to yuck someone's yum. So like tree, door, all of the things, like just leave people the fuck alone. It is just not that hard. It's not that hard to like not give a fuck about like someone's genitalia. It's just not. Like,
it's actually not that it's not that difficult.
It's truly just not that hard.
I don't think about those things literally ever. And
literally
the
ever.
fact that people do is, I mean, honest to God,
is weird.
If this is a topic that you find yourself really getting riled up over, like trans people or drag queens or whatever, I mean, I really think you should do some self-reflection. Why are you spending this much time thinking about what those people are doing? And I will not accept the claim that your children shouldn't have to see it, because I once was a child who those things were explained to me super simple, very easy. I never thought twice about it. So it's not your children, it's you. And I need you to think about it.
Yeah. I saw Rocky Horror Picture Show when I was like 6. So
my mom
I turned out fine.
For a drag queen.
Oh, hell yeah.
I was like 5 years old. My mom was choreographing for Jill Monroe, otherwise known as Uncle Russ. Like, what's he doing?
Is your mom's name Mandy?
Mandy Moore.
Hell yeah, Mandy.
You've been liking my mom's dance TikToks.
I love your mom's TikTok so much. I love her.
Oh man. All right. So as demonstrated, I mean, there's a million things we didn't even get into. The first 100 days have been a roller coaster of absolute chaos. And this was just three little tiny drops in the bucket. But maybe we should give people like, I don't know, a palate cleanser. What can they do? What can they still do that matters?
I mean, I think, something we say and we have said until we've turned blue in the face is, call your representatives. First and arguably easiest thing that you can do.
Calling your representatives, and specifically this week, about the budget.
Mm-hmm.
The budget,
exactly. Yep.
Social Security, Medicaid, all these things that are on the line. There are Republicans who have been identified as swayable. So make sure, even if you're in a Republican district, you understand what's happening with the budget and you call.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been tons and tons of protests across the country. So go to protests, mobilize, get out in your community, attend town halls, even if it is a Republican candidate who's doing a town hall and you're a Democrat, even if you're a Republican
Even
and it's a Democrat, you need to attend. Like, you need to go and ask questions. If it's a Democrat and you're a Democrat, still go. Like, everybody needs to be held accountable, even Democrats. So this is not just a Republican thing, although they are, the worst ones, but this is also a Democrat thing. So we cannot have an individualistic attitude when it comes to saving democracy. We've said this before. The attitude of individualism is what they want. Mm-hmm. And the further that we perpetuate the concepts of like, well, this doesn't really apply to me, so therefore it's not important for me to say anything about, to act on, to get out and protest for, the more that you get sucked into that line of thinking, that is where we get roped into authoritarianism, fascism. We are already on a slippery slope to both. That's how we're pretty far down the slope. We are sloping, my friend. So that's how it all thrives on that. Yeah. So the more that you can think of a we mentality versus me, I think the better.
And I mean, having conversations with your friends and family members, which I know is exhausting, but in particular, ones who maybe agree with you, but just aren't that involved in what's happening. Mm-hmm. I think we've talked about this a little bit. I have friends who are just like, I've turned it off. I'm not engaging anymore. That is exactly what they want. And listen, I understand, protect your peace, set your boundaries, but at the end of the day, we have to participate in said activities, calling, showing up, protesting, etc. And I know that the conversations are hard, especially if you don't agree. And you know what? You shouldn't have to be the one to lead them.
Yeah,
like life
totally.
is hard enough, but sometimes that's just a part of resisting. And sometimes you just gotta lace up your boots and get it done.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, JB Pritzker earlier this week literally called for mass protests, for mass rallies. I've never been more proud to live in Illinois, where we have a governor who has a fucking backbone. This man is like doing the most out here. He has been one of the loudest Democrats since Trump took office again, and I feel very proud of that. He was on Jimmy Kimmel earlier this week as well. These are the things that we expect from our Democratic leaders. These are the things that we want to see from them. And these are the things we should hold them accountable to. These are the standards that they should be showing us. So it's quite easy on their end to do well in office. All that means is taking into account what your constituents want. And so that's really, I think where we're at is make sure that they know if you are displeased with something.
Yeah, I think a lot of the issue tends to be, and you kind of touched on this, is this idea that other people are going to handle it. Other people are calling, other people are protesting. And you know what? Maybe if those aren't the ways for you, if you have any ability to make a monetary contribution to something, that's also a way of protest, or withholding your dollar, as we talked about with Target. That's a way to protest. But the monetary contributions are super important for some of the major organizations and institutions that could really use it. Thinking your local library system, we've talked about how our libraries, the First Amendment, all of that under attack. PBS, NPR, any journalistic organization that you agree with, or the ACLU, as I mentioned earlier, people who are using funds to fight the legal side of things. As we mentioned, the attack on information is super strong, and that's precisely the point. That's also kind of why we started this podcast, finding a different avenue to share this type of information. So if you're able to donate to any of those, please consider doing so if the other methods of resisting aren't for you.
And another way that you can obviously support us and support, the fight for democracy, folks, is by sharing this podcast with people, sharing this episode with friends, family, whoever you think could benefit. So this would be a great option to share with people who maybe are, like, to your point, Mallory, want to stay informed, but are, kind of trying to find something that's an easily digestible source. Hopefully we can be that for them. We're hopeful that this can be a place where you find concise information and hopefully even talking points to go and share with, those who might be misinformed or have just been sucked into the, news cycle fuckery of the right. So, sharing this is a great way to do that as well.
Just share with the disclaimer that they're going to hear an F-bomb or two from time to time.
1,000%. And they will hear me read to filth most of the people on the right. I absolutely will. I have no.
If you're
no
a big fan of
that.
Kristi Noem, this isn't the place for you. If you're
Kristi Noem, Caroline Levitt.
I was going to say Caroline, no thank you.
Not for you.
All right. Well, until next time.
Catch you later, folks.